Cool. So everything's set up.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay.
So, well, I put a PowerPoint presentation with slides together, but I haven't prepared lots of things to say, so anyone can ask questions.
Yeah,
And,
sure. It's fine with us.
yeah.
So,
So would you like me to start screen sharing straight away?
yeah, there is an option with share screen.
Yeah.
I think it should work.
Yeah, is that working?
Yeah, we see your desktop.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I was going to just start by, I suppose, talking just generally about my routine and what's been happening here in the last year or so.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, anyone at any point, if they have a question, because I don't have very much to say about my own work, so questions are welcome. But we'll see how it goes.
Sure.
So I took a photo of Glasgow out of my window, so from my flat.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just thought it'd be nice to see what it looks like here. I mean, the buildings in the picture are quite typical of the city, these tenement buildings. So I'm on the top flats of my block. And this is a picture inside my flat. These pictures are all by my friends, and it's nice to have them up around me.
You also have a studio where
This is the studio.
Okay.
So this is sort of seeing. I took the picture from inside my space in the studio, but the whole space is shared by about 10 other artists.
Oh, okay. I was about to ask you if you're sharing. It's quite large, but
yeah. So there are spaces upstairs you can see on the mezzanines with people up there, and then people on the ground floor too. And some of the people in at the moment are students from the Glasgow School of Art, but they can't use the studios at the school because of the virus.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's the same over there still with you. Can you use the studios at the school?
Yeah, unfortunately, very few students are coming in the studio, so we are mostly working with them online.
Right.
And it's very frustrating and difficult because we also want to organize with them some physical exhibitions. Last year we had only online exhibitions, so it was a little weird for us.
Yeah.
So our faculty is empty most of the time, and we hope that in autumn, starting with October, there won't be so many restrictions and students will start to come.
Yeah.
I
think it is hard. It is hard with art. It is really important to see other people working, and there's nothing that we can do about it, but I don't know. And online exhibitions are a bit rubbish.
Yeah. So they don't have the same importance as the normal ones have.
Yeah.
So
but it's been for me throughout the virus, because the studio is quite small, no one's in charge of it, and no one was really coming in, so I've been able to keep using it. Like that's been really lucky, because I think lots of people over here have just ended up having to work from their flats, and it's not easy, as I guess you guys all know. So yeah, carry on.
Oh, no. So I was also about to ask you, how are the things going there with the exhibitions and
Well, they're just starting to open up again. I went to an opening last week of a performance artist, but you had to kind of walk through wearing masks, and then you could have a drink outside but it wasn't like a normal opening, but still it was nice to go and see something.
Here, yeah.
Anyway, this I was doing last week. That's the sign for above the door of the studio. Because there used to be one, but it rained so much and the wood got completely soaked, and then I was in the studio and it all came crashing down. So this is a sign for above the door outside. I was trying out this kind of paint called casein, which is you make it from milk.
Okay.
And I think it's good for big pictures, like maybe a mural on a wall. So this is a fairly large piece of wood that this is painted on. I think I wanted to show some things at the beginning that were more like fun projects related to painting, but not like usual painting work, if that makes sense. Because I don't know, I think it's sometimes good to do something that seems like fun and it's something different and maybe has more of a practical purpose. So that this is an example of that. And this was a ping pong table. So actually this is what I'm sitting on now. So I got a plank of wood and painted it blue and then painted the lines on.
Oh, okay.
But it's not, it's not an art project really, but it's like it uses paint, and it became my sort of obsession for a few days, and I stopped doing anything in the studio. And I happened to make it when the Duke of Edinburgh died. So I finished it on the day that he died, heading to him. The Queen's husband.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask you about this picture. Okay.
So now this is sort of starting looking at normal work, and this was from Yash, these ones.
Oh yeah, I remember.
So what I was doing while I was staying with you was doing lots of those pencil drawings outside. So on the left is one of the drawings that I made, and then the painting on the right was made in the studios at the art school. So I was taking the drawings that I made on location and then using those to make the paintings. And these were painted in egg tempera, so some of the students came to the workshop.
Yeah, exactly. It's tempera with egg.
Yeah, egg.
Okay.
But the painting on the right, once I brought it back to Glasgow, I worked on it a bit more with oil paint over the egg tempera. Just make kind of enriching it a bit. I mean, sometimes it can be quite nice to work over egg tempera in oil paint, and it works fine. But apart from this painting and 2 or 3 others, I was just really drawing in Yash, and it was really nice to focus on drawing for a while.
Yeah, I remember you did a lot of drawings.
Yeah.
It was quite a surprise for us that you worked a lot.
Yeah.
And
because the weather was really nice, and I just wanted to be outside all the time.
yeah, in comparison to the weather from your place, I think here it's more sunny, I guess.
Well, yeah, and maybe I was just lucky because it was it April?
Yeah.
And it just seemed very, very nice and warm and sunny. So yeah, I think usually I found if you do a lot of drawing outside and then you go to the studio for a bit, things in the studio happen much more quickly than they do when you just spend all day in there. You spend less time painting, but the painting that you do is better because you've sort of warmed up by doing the drawing outside.
Yeah, so
and you already have a vision of what you want to paint.
Yeah,
And in that way, it's really important to actually experience, you know, the space, the actual space outdoors, I think.
Mhm. Yeah, I
Um,
think these two activities, working outside and inside, should be connected somehow.
yeah. Even when, I mean, so on the residency, the paintings that I was making were directly related to the drawings. But even, I suppose more recently, the paintings that I've been doing don't really relate to the drawings that I've made outside, if that if that makes sense. So I would do lots of drawings of the landscape, but then the paintings would be more imaginary scenes. But even then, it's really good to have done that drawing from observation. It sort of fires your imagination.
Yeah, I think you mean that you sometimes you interpret some drawings that you are doing outside, but you don't really do some reproductions
Yeah, yeah.
of
So the
them.
painting can be completely different.
Okay.
It's like two different activities, but they benefit each other.
Mm-hmm.
But this painting was I don't have the drawing, but the drawing was quite close to this one.
Yeah.
One sort of technical thing to do with the egg tempera, which I realized after coming back from Yash, is that it works much better when you put a lot of water in.
Mm-hmm.
You add a lot of water to the paint, and you can work with it much more easily. So that's a tip. Because I'll show you some paintings that I made last year, and I felt that I got to grips with the material more just through understanding how it works. And one of the things was to use more water. So these were last year in maybe March. So it was just when the coronavirus was getting going in Europe. And in, I suppose, France maybe had already gone into lockdown. And then in England, we weren't sure what was going to happen. But I think because everything seemed a bit weird, and it seemed like not a good idea to keep doing the work that I was doing the month before.
Mm-hmm.
So I had been making these oil paintings that had gone on for a while. So I was started making watercolors just to have a change, because if you know, like it's hard to carry on with some work which you're making in a completely different sort of situation. So I was going to the studio and doing these watercolors, and then for me, using water-based paints like watercolor or egg tempera, it's better for working quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's the same for everyone, but I think for a lot of people, oil painting is very slow. So you have an idea, but it really builds as you're working on the painting. Whereas with watercolor, you have an idea and very quickly you can see it appear on the page. So from these kind of drawings, I was making little paintings. So these are egg tempera paintings. And each of these was based sort of loosely on a watercolor that I did from my imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And actually, I started making, because these boards are sort of this kind of size. They're quite small, like the size of a book. And I made quite a lot of boards in my studio because I thought that when we went into lockdown, we wouldn't be allowed to go to the studio anymore. I was sort of imagining we'd be having to stay in our flat all the time. So I thought if I make some small boards to paint on, then in my flat, I can set up some still lifes and paint some flowers.
Okay.
That was my plan.
Mm-hmm.
But I realized I just didn't really want to look at things and paint them. I wanted to make things up. And then it sort of turned out that because no one was going to the studio and, you know, no one was stopping you going there, I just kept going. And then this was the work that I was making there. So instead of being at home painting flowers, I was in the studio painting kind of imaginary stuff. But it was all new ideas. It wasn't related to the stuff that I'd been doing before the pandemic, I suppose. But at the same time, the paintings aren't a response to the virus. You know, they're not really. You know, they are just what they are.
Yeah, and it's very interesting the sketch, not the sketch, sorry, the work with the girl, which seems to want to get out of that flower,
Yeah.
like crying of help or something like this.
Yeah. I never really think about what they could mean or what's going on. I sort of think, I think that as soon as you start to try to explain what you're doing, then it becomes more boring. So it's better just to act and not to think with painting.
Yeah,
And then
the same.
and other people can bring their own ideas to it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's good that, you know, you can find some meaning in it, but I don't know what it means to me.
Yeah, I think this is the beauty, you know, of just painting and leaving the others to interpret.
Yeah.
Your.
Because as an artist, you don't want to explain things to people, and no one wants to look at art where they feel that they're being, you know, when someone's telling you what to think about it. You want to be able to bring your own interpretation. But
Yeah.
I mean, it was the spring when I was painting these, so I was thinking about flowers, thinking about things growing, and because although that everyone was in lockdown, you know, the weather was really good, and all of the flowers were coming up, so it was actually quite positive. You know, outside was very nice to be outside if you could be.
Despite all those restrictions.
Yeah, I mean, you could walk, you could go out for a walk. And maybe, yeah, I think lots of people were doing that because there wasn't anything else to do. So the only entertainment was to go out these. And actually, that's quite a nice thing to do. But these two, because my original plan was to actually paint the daffodils in the flat, like I was saying. So I got some daffodils, and then I did actually do some paintings of them, you know, from observation. But then I found it more fun to do the watercolors and just make up a painting. So I was giving the flowers faces, just so it felt more like, well, less like a still life and more like some other type of thing. But so in a few of these slides, I've put the watercolor, which I would have done first, and then the egg tempera painting, which I did afterwards. And it's actually been interesting for me to look at how the idea shifts between the different media. And you know, there's your initial idea, and then that gets refined in the second version.
Yeah.
Because I think this painting is more effective when the flower is looking straight at you, like in the second one. And you know,
impact.
sorry.
It has a greater impact.
Yeah, I think so. It's more direct, and
Mm-hmm.
then I wanted the face to be like, to seem that it was kind of shrinking back and slightly hidden inside the flower. Instead of a face being drawn on, it's like you're peering inside, and there's this little small face inside it. And then in the background, there's just some stuff that could be part of a more conventional still life. I think with these paintings, I was sort of concerned that they shouldn't be too. If everything was silly and fantastical, then it might be a bit annoying. So you have to ground it in reality. So whether that's like having some scenery in the background or some boring, mundane, ordinary objects like a cup or a book, it helps the magical aspects kind of come through better. And part of that is to do with still thinking about working from observation, bringing reality in, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yes, and I noticed that there is a tension as for a compositional point of view, because this daffodil is quite big
Mm,
and it occupies almost the whole space.
yeah,
It gives me this feeling of tension, but it's a good one. It's in a positive way.
tension.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
visual, I guess.
Well, it's like I suppose it's like a person when you're talking to a person, their face is, that it's up in your face, and that's the focus, and and then you're just seeing past to things behind.
Yeah.
So this is another example of how an idea goes through from a watercolor to the painting. So in the first version, there's just this face with these kind of towers on either side. I was imagining that it's like a sailor, and these one's a lighthouse, and the other one is a building on an island, maybe. But then in the painting, for whatever reason, I got rid of the buildings so that I suppose it was kind of merging different ideas, because you have the person's head, but then also some ideas from the flower paintings. And again, the figure's got a flower in their mouth. And the thing in the background, I was imagining as a sort of spirit or something that isn't, it's not another human figure, but it's like a mask or something.
Yeah, it reminds me from the Picasso's masks.
Yeah.
It's quite.
I guess it's like an African
Yeah,
mask.
African. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I wasn't looking at those in books or anything, but it just came out. I think it must be. Also, there's this, there's a PlayStation game called Crash Bandicoot, which
I don't know.
it's like a kind of, it's their character a bit like Mario, but in that game there's a mask which follows you around, and it looks a bit like that. But that's based on an African mask too. So I think that I was thinking of that, and also like in the painting you have the flower which is in front of the face, and then sort of echoing it behind it is the mask. Because they're both kind of round disc-like things, and they're like the buildings in the watercolor. There's one on each side. I think the reason I wanted to show these together is that there doesn't actually seem to be that much in common between the two versions, but they are kind of related in how they're structured, maybe.
Yeah, as for compositional point of view, yeah, they're related. So it's quite interesting to see them together.
I think one thing about making work from another work is that there's no point in doing it again. So you have to find something new to bring to it. So in a way, the more you change, the better, because then you're still creating something. Because I think I've made the mistake before of trying to make a painting from a drawing, but not changing enough. And then you get bored because you're really just doing the same that you've already done. There has to be a feeling of like spontaneity and creating.
Yeah, of course.
But then this, with this example, there's more in common between the two versions. So again, the watercolor came first, and things have changed around in the painting, but the basic idea is still the same. The sort of story that it's telling is still the same. But, for example, the log has moved closer in the painting, and the flower, the sort of expression on the flower has changed. But I mean, I would not usually actually look at the sketch while I'm working on the painting.
Oh, okay.
I'd look at it at the very beginning, and then you allow it to change, and then after a certain point, it's not really useful to look at it anymore, because with any change of scale or material, it has to kind of find its own way. It has to become a different thing.
Independent, maybe.
Yeah, it has to become independent, and you have to work out its own problems. So it's been nice to put this presentation together, because I am doing now what I didn't do when I was working on them, which is to compare them and see, and I can see where the changes have been made. But most of the changes aren't really very deliberate. It's just like you just kind of make it up as you go along. So
Yeah.
I had something in mind when I was doing this. I think of a kind of fairy tale where someone's picked a flower, and then the flower's turned into a kind of magical flower that can talk.
Yeah, I like that flower that is held in this girl's hand at the
Yeah.
back. I find it interesting that it seems like she's hiding the flower. Makes me wonder why.
You mean the flower, the
red one?
Yeah.
Small one from the outside.
I think what I was thinking is that that's another flower that she's picked, but that one hasn't transformed into anything.
Oh, okay.
I mean, maybe again, it's ambiguous, and you can read into it what you like.
Yeah.
I mean, sometimes I've tried to make paintings that illustrate a story that's actually been written by someone, but that can be less interesting, because you already know how the story goes, and you feel obliged to be accurate. So, for example, if you were doing Little Red Riding Hood or something, you know the story.
Yeah.
Then you know that she has to have a red cloak and a wolf, whatever. But if you just go with whatever comes to mind, then you're being more like a writer who creates a story. So for yourself as the artist, you don't know what's going to happen. And for that reason, I'd rather not base things on actual stories. This was, I mean, I painted this around Easter, so I was thinking about eggs, and we were painting some eggs. I wanted to try and find some photos of these, but they were on my old phone and I've lost them. But we were painting onto actual eggs, little faces. I think that's maybe in the Russian Orthodox Church and the Eastern Orthodox Church. That's a tradition, isn't it? Decorating eggs.
Yeah. We are breaking eggs.
Yeah.
On Eastern, we are coloring them.
Yeah.
Red.
But they're usually patterns, are they? They're usually not figures that you paint onto them. I watched some YouTube clips of a Russian lady who was doing these, and I think she was boiling up onion skins to dye the egg. So anyway, this is maybe an example of where you do something for fun, which was painting the eggs, and then it kind of finds its way into your more, your studio work. because I painted those eggs, and then in the studio I was painting little egg figures, and this it kind of references Humpty Dumpty because there's an egg on the wall. But then I was thinking of an Orthodox Jewish person and the beards and the hats.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, that was sort of nonsensical, just because I was thinking of the Russian Orthodox, and then I was thinking of Jewish, just religious orthodoxy in general, and then Jewish Orthodox and how they dress. So that was my line of thought, but it's not very logical.
I'm also thinking about the Bosch
Yeah.
painting.
Yeah.
This was my first impression when I saw them, and I find them really interesting. Although they are weird, but I like them. I like this weirdness.
Yeah. I was actually having fun, yeah, I think I hadn't done so much painting that was so imaginative, but it is fun because you don't really know what you are capable of doing. You just start to imagine something and start to draw and paint it, and you can surprise yourself by what you are able to draw. Because I wouldn't have said that I could do, interesting pictures of eggs walking around. But when you start drawing, you realize you can come out with these things.
Yeah, I think this is the purpose. I'm also doing the same. I'm starting a painting. I know I have some sketches before doing the painting, but I have something in my mind. But then during my painting, I'm discovering a lot of stuff, and I'm not very sure how it's going to end.
Yeah.
So.
But that's the best. That's the best way, isn't it? Because if you know how it's going to end, it just becomes like
it's a surprise. So.
Yeah. But recently I've been sort of worrying about how to balance working imaginatively and working from reality, and when to start looking more at the world and bringing in sketches made from life, because it can sometimes seem to complicate things and slow things down. But at the same time, if you work too often from your imagination, you find that you're repeating yourself, and that there's not enough variety to the sort of forms you're putting in the paintings. Do you understand that?
Yeah. So I was wondering. So you said that if you're working from your imagination, you are repeating yourself, and I was wondering how would you feel if you would work only by getting inspiration from outside? Maybe you feel lost.
But do you mean only getting inspiration from the landscape outside that you look at?
Maybe you should combine. I think this is the I don't know, the ideal thing, to combine these two things, so that you can also have your own space in the studio when you can interpret the inspirations that you got from outside world. And
I think that's probably right.
it should be balanced. Yeah.
Also, not to put pressure on yourself to always use the drawings that you make outside in the paintings, but just to do it for the experience of doing it, and sort of trust that that will come in some way into the paintings. Because, for example, with this one, there's a landscape in the background, and I didn't base that on any drawing that I made, but I'm sure that it came out of some time in the past when I've been looking at a landscape, or when I've been drawing one, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I'm also thinking that during this pandemic, it was a little weird that, at least in Romania, especially here, I think the restrictions were very tough, and people weren't allowed to get outside too much, only with a declaration. I guess it was the same thing also in UK, but also for artists, I guess it was this forced staying home. It was kind of lack of inspiration, because I think also outside, the outside world is a great source of inspiration, because our imagination is connected to the outside space. So I don't know, it was difficult to not to be allowed to get in touch so often with the others.
So in Romania, you couldn't even go out for a walk for exercise.
Yeah, I remember that I had to have a declaration with me, and there were some specific options that I had to choose before going out. So only for physical exercises, let's say, I could go, except for shopping and other drugstores and other, I don't know, essential stuff. But it wasn't, for example, in that declaration, it was specified that, for example, I want to go outside for a walk. No, it was very difficult. So that's why I was thinking while you were telling us about, I don't know, your way of working, that yeah, it's difficult to work only from your imagination, especially during these times. Now it's better, much more better. But in March, April, May, it was kind of different.
Well, I suppose, I mean, the good thing is it's sort of reminded artists that it's important to go out and, you know, be outside in the world and not always be in the studio.
Yeah, these two should be combined. And we are social beings, so I think we are dependent on the external environment, and it's very natural to be like this.
And it is people as well as nature. Actually meeting people, and I think that's why it's been hard for art students this last year, because
also
when you're learning and studying, you know, the most important thing is what you learn from your peers. You learn things just by watching other people do things, and by exchanging ideas with them. So I did this painting. I don't really. I think there was a sketch for this one, but I have obviously lost it. But
don't worry.
I'm just trying to think what I was imagining, a kind of garden, and I think at one point there were lots of enormous flowers that were growing like trees. And then in the painting, instead you have this one flower in the foreground, and you know, you don't really know how that's kind of rooted. It could be growing from the ground, or it could be that the figure is holding it. But I think I wanted something that would come up and kind of cut the person's head in half, you know, visually, that it would be a line going through them. And it was almost like an umbrella. It's kind of seems to be sheltering them.
It's kind of protection, maybe.
Yeah.
Isn't this need of being protected from something?
Yeah. Even like it feels like a bit rainy as well. Like the weather, it feels like the weather is turning.
Yeah.
All of these paintings, by the way, are done using a few colors, and it just using the same yellow, the same red and blue and white. And you get a lot of kind of variety in the greens, actually, which is surprising considering it's all just coming from one yellow and one blue. But the way you mix it with little dots on the canvas you can create quite a lot of variety. And actually not using a green is quite nice. You're always creating green from yellow and blue.
Yeah, exactly. It's not a type of green.
Mm. This one was kind of based on something. So the Magic Flute, the opera.
Oh, okay.
So in the opera, the Queen of the Night appears and gives the main character a mission to rescue her daughter. So that this was a painting of that scene, but in the opera there aren't any swans, and the scene kind of plays out in a different way. So it was sort of loosely inspired by this scene rather than being an illustration of it. But one thing, I think in a lot of versions of the opera, when you see it in a theatre, the Queen of the Night comes down on a kind of prop, which is the moon. At least in one version that I've seen, she's sort of lowered down onto the stage on the moon. So the moon is like a physical object in the theatre. So it was interesting to put that into a painting where instead of the moon being just a distant source of light, it's right up close like an object, but at the same time, it is emitting light. So the other thing I wanted to be happening in the painting is that you've got a sort of shift. So maybe on the left-hand side with the figure who's walking with the bird, it seems like it's the daytime, or at least it's the evening and the sun's going down. And then on the right-hand side of the painting, there's more of the feeling of nighttime with the stars, and the light is different. So the painting kind of combines two different times of day, which is something in sort of early Italian paintings from maybe Siena. They quite often do that, where instead of just showing you one time of day, in the same image you see several times of day. And that's usually because they're telling a story which involves things happening in a narrative. So it's not enough just to show an instant of time. And I think I was trying to do something similar with this.
Mm-hmm.
And I struggled to paint the figure on the right, who's the Queen of the Night, with different versions of doing them. Because at one point they were wearing a crown, and the small moon. I can use my pointer. This small moon was attached to her crown.
Oh, okay.
And I think just in the process of trying to simplify the shapes, I ended up making her more like a nun. You know, so she's got a habit like a nun.
Yeah, I noticed now. Yeah.
And the moon is that's a bit like the white fabric that a nun has as
Yeah.
part of their costume, but here it's another crescent moon.
Mm-hmm.
And then the black cloak sort of turns into the night sky. So there's a kind of, the objects are kind of
Yeah, I understand. It's it seems like that she's very well integrated and
into the environment.
In the environment, yeah. Exactly.
I think even in another type of painting, I'd be trying to do this, trying to make you know, several things in the painting all be the same in terms of the color. You know, like the things kind of merging. It's part of the process of simplifying the painting. But in this one, it also helps kind of tell the story, because this isn't a normal person. She's a kind of incarnation of the night. So it makes sense that her costume would be like made from the night sky.
It's very metaphorical.
Yeah.
Nice.
But for me, this was quite new to make paintings like this, and that was a fun thing to the thinking about the story can help you to solve problems that seem to be purely pictorial problems. That, you know, it's not just about paint and shape and color, because all of that relates to a human story. Oh, another little detail. This is the picture of the girl that this man is a man. This is a man, but it looks a bit like a woman. But he is meant to be saving this girl who's in the picture.
Oh, okay.
So the Queen of the Night gives him the picture, and he falls in love with her, and then goes on a quest to save her. So this one, because I've been doing a lot of things that seemed to be referring to fairy tales or maybe timeless stories, I thought it would be good to try to do something that related more to contemporary life. You know, that had the same atmosphere, but trying to bring in things from our own time in a way that they could seem symbolic or maybe metaphysical or metaphorical. So I think a cyclist seemed quite good for me to paint, because a cyclist's clothes are, you know, the lycra that they wear is skin tight. So it was, you don't have to think about the fabric so much, because the clothes that they're wearing clings to the figure anyway. So that was one reason for using a cyclist. And I don't know, I like riding a bike, and the shapes of the frame of a bike. You know, you know, the triangular shapes of the bike kind of are interesting to put into a painting, I think. And here they kind of, these lines relate to the lines of the tree, the kind of angularity of them. So all that I had in mind for this is that this boy has been cycling and he's come across a snake, which has startled him. And then there's a plane going overhead. Don't know why. And here are some wind turbines. Just trying to bring in more things from that you would see today in the world. But I think they're just, you can replace them, because a bird is like a plane and a wind turbine is like a windmill, which is the kind of thing you have in a fairy tale anyway. You know, that it sort of seems to symbolize or represent the same sort of thing. And so this was painted quite a bit later. This would have been in the autumn, and the colors sort of seem like they're from the autumn. And I think there's a point where if you start a new project. So for me, the new project was doing these quite small egg tempera paintings. And then you have the initial excitement about it, and you fire off ideas really quickly, and you don't have to think very much at all. And then the further and further you get into it, it becomes more complex, and you have to work a bit harder maybe to get good results. And you have to make it more difficult for yourself maybe. So I see this painting as being a bit more complex and kind of further along the kind of trajectory of this project. And here is just another example of working from the sketch on the left and then taking it into a painting. So the idea that kind of comes through is these like vertical shapes, which in the sketch, they could be anything. They just seem like bands of color. But then in the painting,
Trees.
they definitely seem like tree trunks, although they're very simplified. But there are even things that are really nice about the sketch that maybe aren't in the painting. Like I quite like the purple with the green. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I think the nice thing for me about the watercolors is that it feels more abstract, and you don't kind of get into thinking about real space in the same way. It seems more flat and more decorative and flat. And I'd quite like to make paintings like that, but for some reason, I always start to think more about the actual scene, if that makes sense. The space and the sort of space that you could walk into.
And I feel that these watercolor sketches are more relaxed. I don't know how to express it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not very complex, and
Yeah.
they're more fresh. And
Yeah.
and
Because you don't really have any choice with watercolor, because
yeah,
you can't really change things.
yeah, exactly.
And the way I'd usually do them is to do lots of, start several at the same time. And some of them aren't going to work, but you can't do anything to make them better. You just have to see what comes out and pick the good ones. Like if you're growing tomato plants, you plant several seeds, and some of them are just going to fail. But you can't, no matter how much water you put in them, it's not going to help them to grow. You just have to do lots of them and then pick the ones that are best.
Nice comparison.
But then, there's the freshness in the original watercolor, but there are things that I like in the painting that aren't in the watercolor. Like I like these feather shapes. It's almost like a heart kind of shape. And I think this bird being a kind of more exotic bird works better, because in this one, it's like it could be a pigeon or something. Anyway. This one, I remember I did an ink drawing that was very quick, but I don't have a picture of that either. But I think by this point, I was preferring to start by doing ink drawings with a brush rather than doing watercolors. And that was partly because that saves everything to do with color for making a painting. So before you start the painting, you really have no idea about how the color is going to be. Whereas if you're basing the painting on a watercolor, you've got a plan for the color already. So it was just a way to introduce a different way of working. But this is meant to be a snowy scene. And so I did know that it would be all these very light shades, and with, the blue sky reflecting off of the snow.
So it's a winter? No.
Yeah, it's the winter. And the original idea I had was that it's winter and this character is drawing onto glass a heart, like the frosted up glass, you can draw into it.
Yeah.
And I was trying, in the sketches, I was trying out a way of doing that, so that the surface of the painting is like the surface of the glass. And you're seeing through that to see the person who's drawing onto it. And in the original versions, you saw more of the person's head. It was more cropped, so you would just see the head and the top of their body. But then in the painting, I made it include the whole figure, and there's the scene and everything. But the initial idea was just as someone tracing a shape onto glass. But I think looking at the painting now, you wouldn't know that my idea was that they're painting onto glass.
Yeah.
Still, the heart shape, it's clearly the closest. That can't get any closer to the viewer than it is, if that makes sense. It seems to be drawn on the surface of the painting. It's not part of the perspective or anything. Make sense?
Yeah, I understand now. Because first, when I saw the painting, it wasn't very clear. and
Yeah.
Lydia.
And I quite like there's a kind of sense of energy being transmitted from like a kind of electric shock that he's touching something and it's going through this hand and
To the
up
roots.
the tree and round this branch of the tree. So all of these things come, you know, I didn't know that I wanted to have this branch at the top of the painting, but it became useful to have it there to continue this circle.
Mhm.
And there's another thing that I've been thinking about more in my paintings is having things that keep these circles going, so that your eye's going round and round and round.
And this helps the viewer to have a center of interest. So
Maybe, yeah.
I
Just
guess.
kind of building more rhythms and movement into the painting.
Mhm.
But I think with these compositional things, it's not something that you can plan out or do by following rules. It's something that you just kind of intuitively do it. And while you're doing it, you don't really realize why you're putting things in. But then when you look at it later, you can see that you've created this pattern. And then the further you get into the painting, I find the more subtle those sort of things are. And then the more of that is in the painting, hopefully the more interesting it is to look at. Okay, so that's the end of those types of works. And then I was going to show some newer things that I've been working on in the last couple of weeks. Is there a time limit on this? And
Yeah, I think we still have about 20 minutes
sure.
left.
Okay. So anyway, this project is a commission for a hotel in London. So they want 4 big landscape paintings, and they have to be oil paintings. So that was what I've been working on, and it's a bit different because it can't really include figures or anything that's like a story. It has to be quite a straightforward painting of a landscape. And then apart from that, it has to be a landscape that looks English and that has greens, lots of vibrant greens. That was the brief I had from them. So I started by doing drawings as I did in Romania outside in pencil. And I've been doing these drawings for like a few months because the canvases, I was waiting for those to be delivered. So the only work that I've been able to do has been to draw in pencil until the last couple of weeks where I've got the canvases. But I think that's been a good thing to have all of this preparation done in drawing. So anyway, this is a painting that's in progress.
Mhm.
And obviously you can see can you see that the sketch relates?
So you're still working at it now.
Yeah, it's still, I think it's changed a bit since I took this picture, but I took it only a couple of days ago. And I'm not just using this drawing. I have several drawings made from more or less the same position. And I've been looking at those while I've been working on the painting. But obviously, I can't bring this painting out because it wouldn't be practical because it's so big. So I'm doing it by remembering something about the color, also just making up the color, and then using these drawings to help me to create the space and to remember where things are.
Which sizes?
Well, it's about, I think it's like 1.5 meters long and
Okay.
just over 1 meter high. So they
Mhm.
are quite big.
Yeah.
And for me, this is new as well because I usually work quite small.
Mhm.
But actually, you know, I've bought some bigger brushes and have just mixed up more paint. And then at the beginning, when I'm starting, I use the paint very thin. So it doesn't really present too many challenges. It's just fun to work on something that's larger. I think I always thought that it would be a lot slower and more difficult to work larger, but actually it's more or less the same, but you experience painting in a different way because you're moving around more and you move your arms rather than just your fingers.
Yeah, and I think you have more freedom, when you have a wider space. It's also hard to control a bigger surface, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's also beautiful at the same time.
I think you can get the color to spread out a bit more. Because if you have just a very small point of color on a small painting, often you can't really see that color properly. It looks like a sort of mark, just a smudgy mark.
Yeah, exactly.
It's easier to get the color to register properly.
Yeah.
But it's funny to just paint landscapes because you do, when you're drawing outside, you do start to see more colors in the sky, for example. But at first you think, wow, this is just a big space that's just all blue. And how do you make that interesting? But then when you work on the painting later, you just kind of break it up. So there's kind of yellow, green, and blue in the sky. And at that point, I'm not really thinking about what it actually looks like, but just how I want the painting to be. Because I don't really want to do paintings with like the same blue sky and lots of green everywhere.
Yeah, so you also use your imagination. You
Yeah.
interpret
Yeah.
reality.
But yeah, and it's your imagination which is based in some way on
reality, but
yeah.
yeah.
But what wouldn't be helpful is to have a photo taken outside, because the color would be very boring, and although it would look in some way like a blue sky looks, it doesn't really look like what it's like to experience looking at a sky and all of the contrast that you see in it.
Yeah, and I think this is the purpose, not to do a simple reproduction of reality as an artist. The purpose is to say something from your heart. I don't know.
Yeah.
So
But it's funny because especially with this project, I was sort of worrying about how the paintings would work out, because I'd spend so much time drawing the actual landscape and looking at how it looks in the world, that it starts to be hard to imagine how that would come into a painting. But then as soon as you actually start doing a painting, one thing leads to another, and it develops its own structure, which is really independent of the actual landscape. And it's like with working from the watercolor sketches that I was showing at the beginning, you have to just say, at this point, it's no longer useful to think about this landscape and to go back there and draw, because the painting that you're working on has its own identity, which is evolving, and it's only going to be slowed down and complicated by comparing it to reality. So it has to become its own thing.
yeah,
So
it's
that
personal.
Yeah, I've been kind of finding that I want to work bigger and bigger outside. So I've ended up like drawing across a couple of sheets of A3 paper, 2 bits of A3 paper together.
Oh, okay.
And it becomes a bit tricky trying to like just practically to kind of stop all the paper from blowing away outside. But usually you can work it out, and then when you bring it back to the studio, it's useful to have it. But it's funny how, I don't know, I would always use a small sketchbook and would be able to fit everything in, it seemed. But now I need to have more space on the page to get everything in. It's like your art, the way you look at the world changes. And for me, I've started being more interested in the kind of panoramic view. So instead of focusing in on in this case, just the church steeple. I'm interested in everything that's happening, like the whole field of vision. And I think I never used to really get to grips with clouds passing over, because it seemed like an impossible task because they keep moving. But actually, in drawing them, it helps you to see everything.
That movement.
Say that again?
Maybe to express that movement of
Yeah.
clouds, or
Yeah. And also because the clouds, as they move along, will match up with things in the land. Like, you know, this one's passing over the steeple. And so if you see the steeple in connection with the clouds, then you're getting the whole picture. Whereas if you just draw the steeple, you're not really seeing it in its context, which involves everything that's going on. So again, this sketch
yeah.
relates to this painting.
Mm-hmm.
But because of the format of the paintings, they're actually quite square. They're not very wide. So this drawing is wider than the painting.
Yeah, a little, yeah.
But I would have quite liked to have included more of the stuff on the edges. But obviously the only way to do that on the same size canvas would be to shrink everything. And then you'd have a lot more sky and a lot more grass. So it seemed better to just to crop it.
Yeah, and the building is quite symmetrical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this one, of all of the paintings that I've been doing, is at the moment the most kind of simplified, which I'm not really sure if I like, and it will probably keep changing. But there's something quite nice about just it's like little simple shapes, like a kind of toy town. You know, and the trees look like cardboard cutout shapes.
Yes.
So anyway, this did come from the sketch that when I was drawing, there were these kind of channels of light across I guess because of the clouds that were overhead, there were these like tracks or stripes formed by the light and shade. And that's quite nice to paint. And then all of the little buildings that are lit up by the sun. This one, I don't have the sketch for this, but I was having a bit of trouble kind of trying to work out what I was looking at, because you're seeing like the church through these trees, and then all of the little tiny leaves everywhere. It's very complicated what you're looking at, and that actually painting it in the studio, I've just simplified it quite a lot, because I don't want to really think about all of those little leaves, because it's too much information to deal with, if that makes sense. So here they are in the studio.
Wow, they're all three very big.
Yeah.
The same size.
Yeah, they're all exactly the same size.
Oh, so there are four, I guess.
Yeah, the fourth one, this one I didn't take a picture of it for some reason.
Okay.
But they're all views of the same church from different points in the park.
Yeah, I can see that.
And I've been working on them all in the last 2 weeks. So instead of doing one and then finishing it and moving on to the next one, I've done them all, like I'll work on one for a few hours and then swap them around and work on a different one. And I think that usually I do prefer to work that way, because you don't get stuck on one painting. And you can like put it away for a while and then revisit it, and you can see what you want to change.
So are you planning to do more paintings with the same church?
No, I think it will just be these 4, because the commission is just to do 4 paintings. And then I think I've enjoyed doing them, but I would rather do some work that doesn't involve working from the landscape so much, I think, next. And also, I would like to not use green.
Okay.
Apparently, I think Mondrian, you know Mondrian, the
Yeah,
painter?
yeah. With the tree, with those series of trees, and also with the abstract paintings.
Yeah. But I think he did paint a lot of trees and landscapes, and then in his later abstract paintings, he never uses green. And I think he said that he hates to use green because he had to use it all the time when he was painting landscapes. So he
I
only
didn't know that.
red and yellow, and maybe blue sometimes.
Mhm.
But there is something about green that it seems like it encompasses a very wide spectrum. You know, there are so many different shades of green.
Yeah,
And you almost can do without them if you just break up yellow and blue.
yeah. So it depends on what kind of yellow and what kind of blue are you using.
Yeah,
Depending on this, you can get very many types of green.
yeah. But then that whole exercise becomes a bit boring, and I don't know. I can see why Mondrian would just want to get rid of it completely, because it also seems like quite an untidy color. Like it's sort of close. It can be very close to yellow, or it can be very close to blue. But if you're just using yellow and blue, you kind of know what you're working with. But of course, there's a lot of variety in yellow and blue too. But green has this particular kind of quality. Okay, so I'll maybe try and be quick, just going through the last ones.
Okay.
But this was what I was doing before doing these landscape paintings. And these are all watercolors. And I did what I haven't done before, which is to buy expensive watercolor paper, because I always used to use just cheap cartridge paper, but it's much better to use the proper paper.
Oh, of course, yeah.
And I never really realized that, but they've all worked out a lot better than watercolors that I tried before. So I would recommend anyone who's trying watercolor, you do have to invest in the paper. And also this paper is not lumpy, it's quite smooth. So it's designed for watercolor, but it's not the sort of watercolor paper that you usually buy. And personally, I prefer this smooth paper. So I've actually got some in. Oh yeah, this. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, this is it. But that shows you the size.
Yeah.
And yeah, here's another one. This was it snowed in Glasgow maybe in February. So for a few days we had lots of snow, and I actually went outside and did some watercolors of the snow, but obviously you get very cold very quickly. But then in the studio I was doing watercolors, and I think this is what I mean about instead of thinking about something you actually saw or trying to relate your sketches outside to the work you're making in the studio. This doesn't depict any snow. It's not a snow scene, but it's definitely related to the experience I had in the snow, because the colors are like the colors that you see in sort of icy weather. But I quite liked this one. I quite like sort of keeping everything very pale. So you're using very soft color in thin washes and letting the white paper sort of show through, which I think is what watercolor is good at. Is that the translucency. This one I'm doing at the moment an oil painting based on this. And this is one thing that has made me realize it's fun doing watercolor where you make things up and you don't worry about what things really look like. So there are big kind of weird looking hands in this, and it's all a bit it's all very simplified. But then when I've been making the painting from this watercolor, I think more about like, what does a hand really look like, or who is this person? You know, is this based on a person that I know, or like, you just get involved in more of those questions. And I think those are inevitable, but you sort of wish that you could just continue to make it as you made the original idea, where you don't worry about those things and you just put shapes down. But I've been also drawing lots of people wearing puffer jackets like this, just because everyone is wearing them outside, and they're very easy to depict simply because they have this very distinctive shape.
Yeah, they are very funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then because of doing these puffer jackets, and they were reminding me of cocoons that you know, like worms or butterflies
Yeah,
come
yeah.
out of. So in this one, you know, the person is kind of maybe, you know, they're similar to like one of these cocoons. Okay. This is the last one.
So much with the mask. Oh, thank you. It's nice of you.
I don't know if this word is actually the translate. Does that say the end? Does that mean that this is the end of the?
Yeah, we say thank you for your attention. So, vă mulțumesc pentru atenție. It's a Romanian, but this is also okay. It's the short version, so
Yeah.
I guess it's fine, and I'm happy that you use the Romanian word. Yeah, thank you to Stefan for everything. And
yeah, thanks for inviting me.
yeah,
It's been quite nice to reflect on the work that I've made in the last year, which I wouldn't usually do. So it's been nice to have to think about it and put this together.
yeah, it's also nice to see what have you been working, and it's also nice to remember about the residency period. And yeah. I don't know if you have questions, Dennis, Ioana, or maybe Andrei. What do you think about Stefan's work? I guess I forgot to mention at the beginning of our presentation that Stefan was in Iași in 2019 in April, I guess. I think I forgot to mention this very important thing.
I was about to ask you the same question, actually. When you have been in Iași, I was wondering. Thank you for mentioning.
Yeah, I also made a short presentation on Facebook to the students about you, and they were able to watch that short movie with your interview at Mihailsagi House of Culture. But yeah, it's also important to mention that you were here, and Stefan had a solo exhibition called The Drawings of Iași, and he also had some paintings, but mostly for drawings. And it was, I don't know, interesting for me to see how a different person from a person who has another nationality, I don't know, can have a different perspective of our town, and it's nice to notice.
Yeah.
And
Well, because for me it was really, and everything looked very interesting, which was one of the reasons that I was out so much. It was really because to you it's all very familiar, but to me it was really
this was the point. And I think it was a very different experience, from weather to people, to environment. Everything was different for you, I guess. So maybe this was inspiring, I guess.
Yeah, it was.
Somehow it's Yeah, so Dennis, if you have a question, curiosity, I don't know, something, you can ask Stefan. It's Dennis. She's a Turkish student, and she's studying at our faculty. There is a special program called Fine Arts, which is recently established. So it's a young program for foreign students, let's say, who like to attend our courses. So yeah, Dennis, feel free to ask Stefan if you have any question.
Okay, first thing, nice to meet you and thank you for the presentation.
Nice to meet you
too. It's always nice to see people from different countries. I know I'm from a different country living in Romania right now, and but somehow it's weird for me. I'm trying to adapt so much. I feel like I'm assimilating, and I feel like I'm not from a different country right now, but you are, and I'm seeing you as a different perspective here in Romania, and I just realized that I forgot I'm not Romanian either, and I'm a different perspective, and it's so nice that you gave me inspiration to look around. As a person from a different country, to look around and realize again that everything is different for me right now. Anyway, I'm quite shy to ask questions, but I want to say that it was inspiring for me so much. And thank you too for sharing. Thank you today.
So I hope you can. How long have you been in Romania for?
Actually, I came in Romania in 2020, right before the lockdown started in March. It was the beginning of March, but I was being volunteering. I was a volunteer here with an Erasmus project. After I decided to stay more because I heard about this fine arts program in English. So I decided to, I will try my chance, and I've been accepted. So officially I'm a student since October last year. Yeah, it's not so much. It's more or less around 1 year I'm here.
But a strange year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, does anyone else has a question? You can feel free to ask. I'm sorry that not so many students joined today the presentation, but I will definitely promote this presentation. And
yeah, it's been nice to do it anyway. Hopefully people will have a look later. But to me, it doesn't matter. It's nice to just to chat to a few people.
Yeah, it's nice also for us to see you again, and I don't know, to see how you've evolved with your works, and I'd like to keep in touch with you, and I don't know, to share information about what's happening there. And
yeah, it'll be nice to hear how things kind of start up again over in Iași, and people coming back to the studios.
Yeah, for example, if you will have a solo exhibition, I don't know, if you will plan one day, you can, I don't know, send us pictures.
Yeah, I will do.
Yeah, it would be nice for us.
Okay.
Okay, thank you one more time for everything, and for your time, and we keep in touch.
Great. Okay, bye then. Thank you all for joining.
You're welcome. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.